The storm on Rivetta 4 raged with a fury no human could comprehend. Its howling winds tore through the jagged cliffs of the alien planet, shaking the very ground beneath Caleb Ray's boots. He stepped off the transport ship and squinted into the driving rain, feeling the weight of his father's inheritance documents crinkle in his pocket. Caleb had never planned to inherit anything, certainly not a lighthouse, especially not this one. The structure loomed in the distance, barely visible through the torrential downpour. Its metal frame seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky, reaching towards the gas giant that hung like a giant amber eye, watching everything. The light from the ancient beacon flickered weakly as Caleb approached, giving the scene an eerie, haunted feeling. He had read the reports about his father's disappearance. The accident, the sudden silence, the rumors that the place was cursed, none of it made sense to him. But now, standing at the foot of the lighthouse with the storm howling around him, he could almost feel it. Something deep and forgotten, something important. His father, Marcus Reyes, had vanished 23 years ago, left this place behind, left him behind, left his mother to drink herself to death in their small, isolated home. The inheritance papers were clear. Caleb was the heir to this lighthouse, the legacy of a man who had spent his life here. A life he couldn't remember, a life he didn't understand. Caleb tugged the collar of his jacket up to shield himself from the bitter cold wind. He glanced at the horizon, the enormous gas giant hanging ominously in the sky, casting a dim, orange glow across the storm. There was no sign of any ships passing through the sector anymore, no sign of civilization. Just the empty, desolate landscape of Rivetta 4 and the decrepit lighthouse. He pulled out the papers from his pocket, his fingers trembling slightly despite the cold. Marcus's handwriting filled the margins, notes, calculations, strange scribblings that seemed more like warnings than instructions. The last notation was the strangest. Sublevel unexplored, advise extreme caution. The words practically hummed with an unspoken urgency. Caleb had thought little of it back on Earth, but now, in the presence of the lighthouse, those words felt heavier. He had come here to find answers, but what if his father had known something dangerous, that he wasn't supposed to uncover? A bolt of lightning struck the lighthouse tower, momentarily blinding him with its raw, electric intensity. The thunder that followed shook the ground, and Caleb staggered, his heart racing. He looked up, shielding his eyes against the blinding light, and then saw it, just beneath the flickering light of the beacon. A massive black metal door embedded deep in the stone of the lighthouse's foundation. The door had no markings, no sign of any kind. It was old, ancient almost, covered in rust and grime, with chains crisscrossing its surface, each link larger than Caleb's fist. But the most unsettling feature was the plaque beside it. The metal was corroded and mostly unreadable, but 3 words stood out, burned into his mind as if they were branded there. Do not knock. The silence that followed was absolute. The storm seemed to fade into the distance, as if the door itself had absorbed the noise, leaving only the sound of Caleb's breathing and the frantic pounding of his heart. He stood frozen in place, staring at the door, unsure of what to do. Caleb's hand hovered over the documents again, his father's handwriting taunting him. Memorize, don't trust systems. A shiver ran down his spine as he took a deep breath, steeling himself. He approached the door slowly, each step heavy with the weight of the unknown. A long, hollow groan echoed from within the tower as the door seemed to pulse with life. The chains rattled just faintly, as if something on the other side had heard him. A strange chill ran through him. Something was alive behind that door. He stood before it uncertain, a part of him screaming to turn back. The other part, the part that still felt the sting of loss and abandonment, pushed him forward. This was his inheritance, his father's legacy. There had to be something here, answers, closure. He raised his fist. Maybe you owe me answers, old man. With a single defiant motion, he knocked. The sound echoed through the cavernous darkness of the lighthouse, swallowed instantly by the hungry metal. Nothing changed. The storm raged on. The door remained still, unyielding. Caleb's heart sank. He stood there, hands still raised, a sense of disappointment flooding him. What had he expected? His father's voice, an answer from beyond the grave. Nothing happened. He let out a breath, half relief and half frustration, and stepped back. He should have known better. It was just an old relic, nothing more. The weight of years spent wondering what had happened to his father, what had driven him to disappear, all felt like a joke now. But then it came. A dull thud deep from below. The sound vibrated through the stone floor beneath Caleb's boots, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his body. His eyes widened. He spun around, looking towards the bottom of the staircase that spiraled deep into the heart of the lighthouse. Another thud, louder this time, rhythmic, deliberate. It was a knock from behind the door. The pounding grew stronger as if something, or someone, was trying to break free. Caleb felt his pulse quicken. His hand instinctively reached for the weapon he had stowed in his jacket, a small sidearm, not much, but enough to make him feel slightly safer in this forsaken place. He reached the black door once more, his breath catching in his chest. The knocking had stopped, but the chains were vibrating now, shaking as though something inside was struggling to break free. Dust and rust fell like tiny, metallic snowflakes. He raised the light in his hand, steadying his breath. Something was waiting, something had heard him knock. And whatever it was not alone. As the vibrations of the door continued to grow stronger, Caleb could feel the unmistakable presence of something old, something powerful lurking just beyond. The question lingered in his mind as the door began to shift. Would he uncover the truth of his father's disappearance, or would the lighthouse claim him as it had claimed so many before? Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as the vibrations from the black door grew more intense. The storm outside was relentless, yet inside the lighthouse, it felt as though the entire structure had its own heartbeat, a pulse responding to something far older than the planet itself. The faint smell of ozone, burned metal, and damp stone filled the air. Caleb took a cautious step back, trying to steady himself. Then he heard it, a soft hiss, almost imperceptible over the roaring wind, followed by a sound that made him freeze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and inhuman. Something or someone was approaching from the spiral staircase. A figure emerged from the darkness, a humanoid shape that made Caleb's stomach tighten. Blue skin, iridescent in the stormlight, with features just alien enough to unsettle him. Large eyes, too perfectly symmetrical, cheekbones sharp as knives, white hair falling over pointed ears adorned with metallic cuffs. The figure moved with a grace that was unnatural, fluid, precise. At their hip rested a weapon, something between a sword and a glowing energy projector. Caleb instinctively raised his weapon, training it on the newcomer. The figure stopped, raising their hands in a gesture that was calm but authoritative. Human, the voice was clear, resonant, yet oddly melodic. You have broken covenant. Caleb's grip tightened. This lighthouse is my inheritance, he said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. My father left it to me. The alien studied him for a long, unsettling moment, their silver eyes unblinking. Your ownership is irrelevant. I am Lyra, last sentinel of the outer beacons, sworn to the ancient compact. The covenant remains. You must leave. Caleb swallowed hard. I didn't come here to break anything. I want answers about my father, about this place. Lyra's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly, but her stance remained firm. She moved past him with inhuman speed, descending the spiral staircase before he could react. Caleb followed, cursing under his breath. At the foundation level, the black door stood, the chains now trembling as if in anticipation. Lyra stopped, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. You've disturbed it, she whispered, barely audible over the storm. Her body tensed, every muscle poised for action. Caleb's eyes followed hers to a scrape on the door where rust had been displaced, revealing gleaming metal beneath. The chains rattled violently. His pulse accelerated. Something was definitely alive behind that door. I know, he admitted, his voice low. I think there's someone or something inside, maybe even my father. Lyra's head snapped toward him. Your kind never understands. We keep it sealed with our lives. Behind that door is a horror. Caleb's hand hovered near his sidearm. My father served here, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Marcus Reyes. He disappeared 23 years ago. That name means something. Lyra's silver eyes remained unreadable. The lighthouse requires a keeper. If your father was assigned here, he accepted that duty, as must you, or depart forever. Caleb swallowed hard, anger and desperation mixing inside him. I'm not leaving without answers. The air grew taut with tension. Lyra's blade hummed with energy as she pressed it closer to his chest, drawing a thin line of blood along his skin. But he did not flinch. Then you choose the third path, she said, executing a move so fast Caleb barely registered it. He stumbled, crashing to the ground as Lyra pinned him with one armored knee against his sternum. I will not kill you yet, she said, almost regretfully, but neither will you remain free to endanger us all. Hours passed in silence. Caleb lay sprawled on the cold metal floor, listening to the storm thrash outside. He could hear Lyra moving above, checking systems, securing her vessel, keeping a watch that never faltered. The black door remained ominously still. Then, without warning, a sound echoed from deep within the lighthouse. A sharp, metallic pulse, not sound but vibration. The door responded as though it had a heartbeat. Caleb's stomach twisted. Something alive, something ancient, was moving behind that door. Lightning struck the main spire, shattering a nearby window. The lighthouse shuddered violently. Sparks erupted from failing circuits. The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Caleb felt the cold metal beneath his palms as the vibrations grew stronger. He pressed his hand against the door. It was unnaturally cold, alive somehow. A whisper escaped his lips. "What are you?" And then the pounding stopped. Silence. Caleb exhaled slowly, trying to steady his trembling hands, but it didn't last. From the distance below, a dull, rhythmic thud resumed, louder now, more insistent. Caleb looked to Lyra. Her injured arm trembled as she gripped her weapon. "It senses the storm's peak approaching," she said, her voice tight. "It knows we are trapped. It knows we are afraid." Caleb nodded, heart hammering. "Then we have to act." Lyra's silver eyes met his, something flickering there, fear, respect, maybe even trust. "If it comes, you die first," she warned. The storm reached a deafening crescendo. Wind shrieked through shattered windows, lightning flashed, and metal groaned under the force. Then a final crash reverberated through the lighthouse. The chains of the black door strained, shifting as if something massive was testing their restraint. Caleb swallowed. "It's coming." Lyra's weapon hummed louder, energy pulsing along its blade. She stepped in front of him, protective. Caleb's mind raced. All of his training, all of his human ingenuity, all the lessons his father had taught him, they all pointed to one conclusion. The door was about to open. And whatever was behind it, they would not survive if unprepared. A shadow loomed against the emergency lights as the black door began to give way, the chains rattling violently. Caleb could hear a deep, rasping breath from beyond, felt it through the metal floor. Something old, something powerful, something that had waited centuries, and now it had sensed him. The chains rattled violently, dust falling in metallic flakes around Caleb's boots. Every nerve in his body screamed for him to back away, but he could not. Not now. Not when answers, the truth about his father, Marcus Reyes, might lie just beyond the black metal door. Lyra's silver eyes never left him. Her injured arm trembled as she held the humming blade in front of her, energy running along its edge like lightning trapped in metal. "Stay behind me," she commanded. Caleb nodded, gripping his sidearm tightly, though he knew bullets might be useless against whatever awaited. The final thunderclap struck the lighthouse with a deafening crack, shaking the entire foundation. The chains groaned under the strain, and a single long panel of metal along the door began to bend, bowing outward like a creature pushing against a cage. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. Then silence. The pounding ceased, and Caleb could hear nothing but his own heart thundering in his chest. He looked to Lyra. Her stance remained alert, rigid, but her eyes betrayed something deeper, anticipation, fear, and wonder. She had been a sentinel for decades, yet whatever lay beyond the door had eluded even her understanding. Caleb swallowed and took a cautious step forward. The metal groaned again, and the door shuddered. Slowly, impossibly slowly, a narrow gap appeared, revealing a darkness so deep it seemed to absorb the emergency light itself. Caleb's pulse raced. The air that escaped from the gap was thick and cold, carrying the faint smell of metal and something alive. "Are you ready?" Lyra's voice was a whisper, almost drowned by the storm's fatting roar. Caleb nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." Together they stepped forward. Caleb's hand brushed the cold metal, feeling a vibration that ran up his arm and into his chest. It wasn't just a door. It was alive. It reacted to him. He could feel something on the other side, watching, waiting. The gap widened further. A faint shape emerged. At first, Caleb thought it was some grotesque alien creature, wings folded and body hunched. But as light illuminated it, he realized the impossible. It was human, or had been. An old man, skeletal, skin drawn tight over bones. Chains circled his wrists and ankles, broken and twisted. His hair was white, his eyes clouded with cataracts, yet they fixed on Lyra with an intensity that froze her in place. Caleb's stomach knotted. The man's lips parted. A vibration, felt more than heard, pulsed through Caleb's chest. It was language, but not a language he could understand. Lyra staggered backward, her silver eyes widening. She whispered a name under her breath, one that made her knees buckle slightly. Salazar. "This cannot be," she breathed, Caleb's brows furrowed. "Who is he?" "He is the first keeper," Lyra said, voice trembling. "The one our people chained here for centuries. They called him a guardian, but he has been a prisoner." Caleb's mind raced. A prisoner. "You mean this whole lighthouse, these lighthouses, they weren't just beacons, they were prisons." Lyra's eyes shone with shock and regret. "We were told we were protectors, we were jailers." Caleb stepped closer, ignoring the cold metal floor beneath his boots. He unscrewed his canteen, offering water to the frail man. Salazar's skeletal fingers trembled as he reached for it. Caleb held the container steadily, seeing the faintest glimmer of life in the old man's eyes. Lyra watched, frozen. The human, the one she had sworn to kill if the door opened, was showing compassion, something her people had long since forgotten. The old man's milky eyes cleared, silver irises identical to Lyra's. He spoke first in his ancient tongue, then switching seamlessly to the universal standard. "You sought truth." Caleb allowed the cold, frail hand against his cheek. "What truth?" he asked. Salazar's expression was solemn. "I contain not destruction, not death, knowledge, memory." Caleb's mind reeled. "Memory? You mean everything your people have hidden?" The guardian nodded. "Your father, Marcus Reyes, he freed me briefly. He listened. He learned what must never be forgotten." Lyra gasped, Caleb's heart skipped. "Then that's why he disappeared." "Yes," Salazar rasped. "They took him as a replacement, for the binding, for the centuries of duty, but he refused to replace me completely." Caleb's chest tightened. His father, his hero, his guide, sacrificed, imprisoned, enduring decades of solitude. The weight of it crushed him, yet a spark of human determination ignited. "We have to stop this," Caleb said. "We can't let them continue. We have to free him, free my father." Lyra's silver eyes met his, conflicted. "The conclave, they will not allow it. Generations of oaths demand obedience." Caleb took a deep breath. "Then we do what must be done. Tradition doesn't matter when lives are at stake." Salazar's frail hand rested on Caleb's shoulder. Strength emanated from him despite his skeletal frame. "Trust in your humanity, child. It is what they fear and what they cannot understand. Use it wisely." The first distant klaxons sounded, alerts from the outer sensors. The conclave had detected the disturbance. Soldiers were approaching. Caleb turned to Lyra. "We don't have long." Lyra nodded, determination replacing hesitation. "Then we move, now." As the storm subsided outside, the lighthouse groaned under centuries of strain. Metal shifted. Emergency lights flickered to life in a dim blue glow. The first conclave ships were approaching, sleek and armored, glinting in the stormlight. Caleb, Lyra, and Salazar were not just racing against time. They were racing against centuries of history, lies, and a system designed to crush anyone who sought the truth. The evacuation, the rescue, the rebellion, they had begun. And the path ahead led straight into the heart of the enemy. The lighthouse trembled under the fatting storm, yet the calm outside was deceptive. Caleb could feel it in his bones. The danger was not over. The distant klaxons of the conclave's ships grew louder, slicing through the howling winds as they descended toward the lighthouse. Sleek, angular vessels, each one bristling with weapons and alien technology far beyond human comprehension. Lyra's injured arm throbbed painfully, but she moved with precision, guiding Salazar toward the generator room. Sparks leapt from exposed conduits, casting long, flickering shadows across the walls. Caleb followed, mind racing. Every moment counted. If the conclave arrived while the Guardian remained freed, decades of enforced secrecy and imprisonment would resume, and this time there might be no second chance. "You can't trust them," Lyra warned quietly. Her silver eyes scanned the corridors, muscles coiled. "They will obey orders before morality. Generations of conditioning dictate compliance." Caleb nodded, adjusting his grip on his sidearm. "I've seen humans obey orders blindly too," he muttered. "We're not so different, but we can also make choices when it matters." The generator room loomed ahead, the faint blue glow of plasma cutting through darkness. Caleb's heart leaped. His father had left detailed schematics of the lighthouse's systems, backup power, emergency couplings, rerouted conduits. He could use them. They had to act fast. If the conclave breached the outer doors first, their advantage would vanish. Caleb took point, studying the plasma conduits and exposed panels. Sparks arced dangerously from a ruptured line, the air sizzling with the sharp scent of burning ozone. He instructed Lyra and Salazar to stay back while he worked. Keepers, aliens, humans, it doesn't matter. If we lose the power, the lighthouse will collapse, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Caleb traced wires, rerouted circuits, and bypassed failing systems. Salazar's gaze never left him, watching the human engineer with an intensity that made Caleb's chest tighten. This was more than survival. This was centuries of history hanging on a thread, and a single human's ingenuity might tip the scales. "Almost there," Caleb whispered, sweat beading his forehead despite the chill. He connected the final conduit and the generator roared back to life. Emergency lights flickered, then stabilized. Minimal power returned, just enough to navigate, but it was enough. Lyra exhaled, tension visibly leaving her frame. "You've done what my people could not," she admitted. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. "You used what we forgot, your humanity." Caleb's eyes swept the room, taking in the humming machinery, the faint vibration of the lighthouse under their feet, and the faint pulse from the black door. "We don't have long. They're coming." Through the viewport, he spotted the first of the conclave ships landing with military precision. Hundreds of blue-skinned soldiers emerged, weapons in hand, moving in perfect formation. Caleb's stomach churned. The scale of the opposition was overwhelming, but turning back was impossible. His father was somewhere within their grasp, and Salazar's freedom was now their responsibility. The trio moved quickly through narrow maintenance corridors, shadows clinging to them as emergency lighting flickered. Talon, a veteran sentinel who had been dispatched to the lighthouse earlier, joined them silently, his armored form glinting in the dim light. "The preparation chambers," Talon whispered. "Your father is there, deep within. The conclave will guard it heavily." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then we go deeper." The corridors twisted and narrowed, carved from living rock, ancient markings etched along their surfaces. Caleb could sense the centuries of secrets embedded in the walls themselves. Every corner held potential traps, every shadow a possible ambush. Lyra led with her blade humming, Caleb following with Salazar between them, Talon flanking the rear. As they approached the chamber, they encountered the first line of defense, two guards flanking a reinforced security door. Caleb studied them. Both had their weapons raised, alert, scanning for threats. His mind raced. A direct assault would likely trigger alarms, endangering everyone. He straightened his posture, exuding the authority that had come from years of training, years of necessity. "Sentinel Lyra," he announced, his voice firm. "An escort. Emergency protocols require immediate access to the preparation subject." The guards hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Lyra followed his lead, emphasizing the urgency. "Direct orders from the High Conclave," she added. "All containment protocols are compromised, immediate compliance required." One guard reached for his communicator, but Caleb moved faster. A swift elbow to the temple, precise and silent, brought him down. The second guard's weapon raised, but Caleb's strike collapsed his windpipe. Both guards crumpled silently to the floor. Lyra's eyes widened slightly, but she did not hesitate. She understood the stakes. They passed through the security door into a circular chamber lined with transparent cells. Most were empty, but one at the far end contained a figure that made Caleb's heart leap. Gray hair, weathered face, body thin yet still commanding. Even through decades of confinement, the figure radiated authority. Marcus Reyes, his father. Caleb approached slowly, dread and hope clashing inside him. He pressed his palm against the transparent barrier. "Dad, it's me, Caleb." Marcus's eyes opened slowly, dark and clear, showing no surprise, only weary acceptance. "Another test," he rasped. "They've tried this before, using your image, my son's face." Caleb's hands shook slightly. "It's really me, Dad. I found the lighthouse. I found the door. I found you." Marcus's expression remained guarded, doubt creeping into his voice. "They always know what to say." Caleb's voice grew firmer. "You taught me how the lighthouse works. You showed me the systems, the couplings, the emergency protocols. Only someone who knows would be able to restore the generator, keep the lighthouse alive." A tremor passed through Marcus. Recognition, hope, but it was fragile, nearly extinguished by decades of isolation. Lyra stepped closer, her silver eyes darting between father and son. "They will come for him soon. The conclave will not allow this breach." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then we move now. We don't have time for tests or hesitation. Dad, can you stand?" Marcus took a deep, shuddering breath, rising unsteadily. I will try. The chamber's security systems began to shift, locks clicking into defensive positions. The distant alarm blared, klaxons and sirens filling the corridors. The conclave was arriving. Caleb turned to Lyra. We have minutes. We get him out or we lose everything. As the barrier slid open, Marcus stepped forward, frail but determined. The alarms screamed through the lighthouse. Shadows moved outside the transparent walls. Blue-armored figures advanced, weapons raised. Caleb, his father, Lyra, and Salazar were surrounded, trapped, and the moment of confrontation had arrived. The alarms blared, echoing through the lighthouse's stone corridors, drowning out even the distant storm. Caleb's pulse pounded in sync with the klaxons as he helped his father, Marcus Reyes, steady himself. The years of solitary confinement had left Marcus weak, his movements deliberate, but his mind remained sharp, calculating. Lyra moved ahead, her humming blade slicing through the shadows, energy rippling along its edge. Salazar's frail frame followed closely, leaning on both Caleb and Talon. Despite centuries of confinement, the old guardian's eyes burned with purpose. He had survived generations of oppression, and now he would guide them through secrets that even the High Conclave did not know existed. Caleb whispered urgently, "Dad, can you move quickly? They'll be here any second." Marcus's hand tightened around his son's arm. "I can just follow my lead. I know these halls." The corridors twisted unpredictably, carved from living rock, lined with markings that pulsed faintly with alien energy. Marcus had memorized every turn, every maintenance shaft, every hidden junction. His decades of observation while imprisoned gave them an advantage no sensor or weapon could anticipate. Ahead, a checkpoint appeared. Two guards flanked a reinforced door, alert and rigid. Caleb froze, evaluating their positions. Lyra's injured arm throbbed painfully, but she gestured for them to remain calm. "I have an idea," Caleb whispered. "Watch and follow my lead." He straightened, exuding authority that came not from alien protocols but from pure human presence. "Sentinel Lyra, escort in emergency protocols. Immediate access required to preparation subject," he announced firmly. The words were calm, deliberate, carrying the weight of someone who belonged in command. The guards exchanged glances. One reached for his communicator, but Caleb moved faster, 3 steps, and his elbow struck with surgical precision, collapsing the guard's windpipe. The second guard raised his weapon, but Caleb's forearm caught the temple, dropping him silently. Lyra's silver eyes widened, a mixture of shock and grudging respect. "Effective," she muttered. They passed through the checkpoint into a circular chamber. Cells lined the walls, mostly empty. Caleb's gaze darted to one at the far end. Inside, his father's form was steady but frail, watching silently. Marcus whispered, "I never thought I'd see you again." Caleb pressed a hand to the transparent barrier. "I'm here, we're getting you out." The barrier slid open just as the distant klaxons grew louder. Blue-armored conclave soldiers were advancing in formation, moving with the precision of centuries of training. Their ceremonial energy weapons glinted in the dim emergency light. Caleb helped his father forward, guiding him into a narrow maintenance shaft Marcus had discovered during his confinement. "This way," Marcus murmured. "It's the only path they won't anticipate." The passage was tight, forcing them into single file. Caleb moved first, clearing the path, Lyra beside him with her blade humming, Salazar and Marcus following. Sparks leapt from exposed conduits, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. Each step was calculated, silent, a blend of human instinct and years of training. Suddenly, a section of the shaft shifted under their weight. The mechanism groaned, sending a ripple of sound through the corridor. Blue-armored figures paused at the next junction, weapons raised. Caleb froze. He glanced back. "Keep moving, stay calm." They emerged into a wider service tunnel, granting more mobility. Marcus paused briefly, scanning the junction ahead. "Sensors are minimal here. We can move faster, but stay close." Lyra's blade flickered, energy humming higher. "We're almost there," she said, voice tight. "The main exit is near, but the final checkpoint will be heavily guarded." Caleb nodded. "Then we prepare for the last push, all of us together. We can't stop now." The shadows shifted as they approached the chamber of preparation. Automated locks and security systems lined the walls, flashing in quick red pulses. Caleb's hands moved over the panels instinctively, bypassing circuits, rerouting power, every move precise, human ingenuity shining in a moment of desperation. Suddenly, a door hissed open ahead of them. A group of elite conclave soldiers emerged, weapons raised, faces hidden beneath ceremonial helmets. Lyra stepped forward, blade humming to life, energy poolsing along the edge. Caleb readied his sidearm. Marcus took a deep breath, steadier now, following Salazar's guidance. The soldiers moved, disciplined, coordinated. But they had never faced humans who refused fear, aliens who chose empathy over duty, and a guardian who had endured centuries. Caleb lunged, his elbow connecting with the nearest soldier. Lyra spun, striking two more with her blade, arcs of blue energy flashing in the dim light. Salazar, despite frailty, moved with a grace that betrayed decades of hidden strength, creating openings and disrupting formations. Marcus, slower but precise, guided Caleb's movement, ensuring no one fell behind. The clash was chaotic but effective. Shadows flickered, metallic clatters echoed, and the group pressed forward. Caleb's mind raced. Every second counted. The High Conclave would attempt to reclaim their prisoner and enforce their control. Finally, a heavy blast door loomed ahead, the exit to the upper-level landing pads. Caleb's chest tightened with hope. Freedom was just beyond. He pressed a hand to Marcus's back. "Almost there, you can make it." Marcus nodded, strength returning with every step. Salazar's eyes, clouded with age, glimmered with pride. Lyra's blade hummed, energy cutting through tension and fear. As they reached the door, the first distant sounds of pursuit grew louder. Soldiers were regrouping, closing in. The corridor behind them would soon be swarming with conclave forces. Caleb exhaled, heart hammering. "Get ready, one more push. We either reach the landing pads or we're trapped." The blast door began to close as the shadow of the first pursuing conclave soldiers reached the shaft. Caleb's hand slammed against the release panel, sparks flying. Behind him, Marcus stumbled slightly, fatigue threatening to slow them. Salazar's frail frame shivered with anticipation. Lyra's silver eyes locked on the approaching enemies. One misstep now could mean the end, not just for them, but for centuries of truth they were fighting to preserve. The blast door groaned open, revealing the upper-level landing pads. Rain pelted down in sheets, streaking across the transparent shields that protected the platform from the harsh atmosphere of Rivetta 4. Caleb helped his father steady himself as they stepped onto the pad, Salazar leaning on both of them. Lyra moved ahead, scanning for threats with her glowing blade humming like a predatory song. From above, the High Conclave's ships descended, weapons raised, engines roaring, their blue armor glinting ominously in the stormlight. Hundreds of soldiers poured onto the landing platforms, moving with military precision, yet the humans and their allies pressed forward without hesitation. Every step Caleb took was driven by urgency and determination. The years of human ingenuity, adaptability, and compassion were guiding him now more than ever. Marcus's eyes narrowed, taking in the landscape below. Embedded into the rocky mountain, a massive structure loomed, the Temple of Eternal Vigilance. It was a fortress, both elegant and cruel in design, home to the High Conclave for generations. Every spire, every wall, every corridor had been crafted with precision to protect secrets that had been maintained for centuries. "They'll have secured the preparation chambers," Marcus murmured, his voice weak but steady. "We have to move fast, every second counts." Caleb's mind raced. The temple was the heart of the Conclave's power, the place where replacements were conditioned, bindings enforced, and history rewritten. Inside, decades of manipulation awaited. But with Salazar free, Marcus alive, and Lyra at their side, they had the advantage of knowledge and unpredictability. They moved across the landing pads, pressing against the storm. Lyra's blade carved arcs of protective energy as the first of the elite conclave forces advanced toward them. Caleb ducked behind a barrier, sidearm raised, firing with precision at the incoming soldiers. Every shot was calculated, every movement synchronized. Salazar, despite his frailty, guided them through the storm, anticipating patrol routes, exploiting blind spots, his centuries of captivity giving them tactical advantage. The temple's massive doors loomed ahead, heavily reinforced and bristling with defenses. Caleb pressed a hand against the control panel embedded in the stone wall. Red lights flashed violently. Automated defenses whirred to life, sensors scanning for movement. "They've activated the reclamation protocol," Lyra said, her silver eyes narrowing. "If we trigger the main security, it could collapse the entire complex." Caleb exhaled, steadying his breath. We don't have a choice. We either get inside or we die out here. Marcus coughed, fatigue heavy on his shoulders, yet his resolve never wavered. I know the passages, he said. Follow me, trust what I've learned while imprisoned. It is the only way. They entered the hidden maintenance shafts Marcus had memorized, narrow tunnels carved into the living rock. The Conclave soldiers were advancing, but the group moved with near-perfect coordination. Caleb's mind raced, finding ways to bypass sensors, reroute alarms, and exploit weaknesses the Conclave never anticipated. Lyra's blade hummed constantly, providing both protection and a symbol of defiance. They emerged into a wider corridor, glimpsing chaos below. Keepers were engaged in combat with their own, confusion spreading as Salazar's memories and revelations began to fracture the long-standing obedience that had governed the temple. Caleb pressed forward, guiding his father with careful hands, Lyra moving beside him. They approached the preparation chambers, the place where generations of prisoners like Marcus had been held, conditioned, and replaced. Security doors, reinforced barriers, energy locks, all now seemed vulnerable in the wake of their human-led assault. But as they reached the chamber, alarms blared again. Heavy metallic footsteps echoed from above. The High Conclave had arrived, their ceremonial armor gleaming, weapons raised, faces hidden behind masks that made them appear more like statues than living beings. Talon, their silent sentinel ally, whispered, "They will try to reclaim the Guardian and your father. Move quickly." Caleb's jaw tightened. "We won't let them, not this time." The final push began. Caleb and Lyra coordinated seamlessly, using every tactic, every bit of knowledge, every ounce of courage to evade or neutralize their enemies. Salazar, despite his age and frailty, moved with surprising agility, guiding Marcus toward safety while disrupting enemy formations with well-placed diversions. They reached the inner sanctum, the central spire, where evacuation vessels were stationed. Caleb's heart leapt. Freedom was near. But the High Conclave was not idle. Orders barked through communicators, soldiers rallied, and automated defenses activated across the temple. Marcus, though weakened, stepped forward with determination, leaning on his son. "I know another way," he whispered, revealing a hidden panel in the wall. Behind it, a narrow maintenance tunnel led directly to the vessels. "It will be uncomfortable, but it's our only path." Caleb nodded, glancing at Lyra. "We go together, no one left behind." They entered the tunnel in single file, moving swiftly, silently, shadows among shadows. The storm outside the temple was nothing compared to the storm within. Centuries of lies, oppression, and fear clashing with human ingenuity, compassion, and courage. As they emerged near the evacuation vessels, the temple behind them erupted in chaos. Keepers fought among themselves, the binding broken, centuries of control unraveling in hours. Caleb helped his father into the vessel, Salazar moving beside them, Lyra covering their rear. Engines roared, shields activated, and with a burst of acceleration, they lifted off the landing pad, leaving the temple, the conclave, and decades of imprisonment behind. As their ship cleared the docking bay, Caleb glanced back. The mountain itself seemed to tremble, support pillars collapsing inward, walls shearing apart. The temple, their centuries-old prison, was being destroyed from within. Yet on the horizon, dozens more conclave ships approached, faster, relentless. The battle wasn't over. The knowledge they carried, the truth they freed, had marked them all. And now, the High Conclave would come for them, and humanity would have to prove its worth against centuries of alien supremacy. The storm on Rivetta 4 faded beneath them as the ship accelerated into the sky, leaving the crumbling ruins of the Temple of Eternal Vigilance far behind. But Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't truly free. Not yet. The conclave was relentless, and as their vessels vanished from the surface of the dying planet, he knew the pursuit had only just begun. Marcus, despite his weariness, gripped Caleb's shoulder with surprising strength. "We've made it this far, son, but it won't be easy from here. They'll come after us. They'll never forgive what we've done." Lyra stood beside them, her eyes scanning the horizon through the viewport. Her expression was hard, but there was something softer in the way she looked at Caleb, a silent acknowledgement of everything he had done, everything humanity had done. "They will come, yes," she said, voice steady but heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. "But they'll also fear you." "Fear us?" Caleb echoed, still catching his breath. The adrenaline was fatting, but a new kind of tension was building in his chest. "We've freed one prisoner, the truth about the binding has spread, but there's still so much left to do, so many more secrets." Salazar shuffled toward them, leaning on a walking stick made from an ancient metal rod. His clouded eyes still held a sharpness that Caleb had come to trust. "The Conclave fears what they cannot control," the old guardian said, his voice raspy. "And they will seek to destroy us to make an example of the ones who broke their chains. But they will also seek something else, the knowledge we carry." Marcus's face darkened. "My disappearance, the lies about the keepers, the truth about the prison, it's all out in the open now. The Conclave will stop at nothing to erase that knowledge." Caleb clenched his fists. The journey had started with a simple desire to find answers about his father, but now it was so much more. He wasn't just fighting for his father's legacy. He was fighting for freedom, for truth, and for a future where no one else would be silenced like Marcus had been. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were pushing back against an entire system of control, an ancient order that thought they could dictate life and death. Lyra turned to face Caleb. "You're right," she said. "This isn't over, but it doesn't have to be a battle we lose. We can take what we've learned, take what your people do best, and turn it against them." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "You mean we fight back?" Lyra nodded slowly, her expression hardening. "Exactly. It's time to use the one thing they can't understand, humanity's adaptability. You've shown them what you can do already, Caleb. You freed Salazar, you freed your father. Now we need to rally more. There are more out there who have been silenced, more who have been trapped for generations. We're not alone." Marcus straightened, a glimmer of strength returning to his voice. "You're right. They can try to erase us, but the truth won't disappear, not now, and not ever." They all fell silent for a moment, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound between them. But in that silence, Caleb understood. This wasn't just about surviving. It wasn't even just about freeing those who had been locked away. It was about igniting something bigger, something that could stand against centuries of tyranny. The ship's communications panel flickered, drawing everyone's attention. A transmission had come through, encrypted, urgent. Talon's voice crackled through the static. "Caleb, Lyra, Salazar, I don't have much time. The Conclave has mobilized. I've intercepted their communications. They've already begun to rally fleets to hunt you down, but there's more." Caleb leaned forward, heart racing. "What more?" "They've learned about the knowledge you carry, the information from Salazar's memories. And they've realized it's not just about keeping you from spreading the truth," Talon continued. "It's about something much bigger, something that could end their control forever." Caleb's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "There's an ancient system of knowledge, the real reason the Keepers were put in place." Talon's voice dropped lower, filled with gravity. "It's not just about history, it's about a weapon. A weapon so powerful it could wipe out entire systems, erase civilizations, and destabilize everything the Conclave has built. You have to stop them, Caleb. You have to stop them before they use it." The words hit Caleb like a physical blow. A weapon. The Conclave didn't just want to control, they wanted to obliterate anything that threatened their power. "We don't have a choice," Marcus said, his voice grim but resolute. "We have to stop them, and we have to do it before they find the weapon. If they use it, it's not just Riveta 4 they'll destroy, it's everything." Caleb nodded slowly. The weight of it settled on his shoulders, but now he understood. The stakes had changed. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about preventing the destruction of everything, of all the worlds that had been silenced for too long. "Let's go," Caleb said, his voice steady, no longer just the son of a man who had been lost, but a leader who understood the true cost of freedom. "We fight, we win, or we die trying, but we do it together." Lyra's gaze hardened, and for the first time, Caleb saw the slightest hint of respect in her eyes. "Then it's time we show them what humanity is capable of." Salazar, frail yet unwavering, stepped forward. "The Conclave has feared us for centuries, but they have underestimated you, Caleb, underestimated your people. This is your fight now. And it's not just for your father or for Salazar, it's for all of us." The ship's engines roared louder, a deep vibration that matched the resolve building in Caleb's chest. They weren't running anymore. They weren't hiding. They were going to fight back. They would stop the Conclave. They would stop the weapon. And they would ensure that the truth, humanity's truth, would never be erased again. As the ship turned, heading toward the enemy fleets that loomed on the horizon, Caleb felt something inside him click into place. The last piece of the puzzle was not knowledge. It was unity. Humanity, his people, had the power to change the course of history. Together, they could dismantle the Conclave's empire piece by piece. The fight wasn't over, it had just begun.